What is up, guys? My name is Matt from Magic the Greatening, and today I got a cool budget deck tech for you. It's going to be budget Jund Scorpion Haptra counters. I know, it's a janky name. I'm not the best with names. You could probably just call it Jund Scorpion God. But before we get into the video, go ahead, hit that like button. It helps out a lot. Subscribe if you are new on the road to 2K. We're past halfway there. And click the eye icon in the top right corner. Go ahead and vote for next video's deck tech. Let's get into it. I usually just start off with the creatures and go from the bottom of the curve to the top. We're also going to be starting with the creatures, but we're going to go over the most important creatures in the deck first. We're going to be playing 4 copies of Soulscar Mage, 3 copies of haptra, Vizier Poisons, 4 copies of archfiend, ifnir, and 3 copies of Scorpion God. A lot to talk about here in this section because this is most of our creatures, and it's really important. Soulscar Mage turns our burn cards in this deck into -1/-1 counter cards, which is super, super nice. The prowess isn't going to be super relevant. We're mostly going to be using it for that second line of text there. Also fits out a curve well, turn 1 play. Most of the times we're going to be playing a tap land because we're trying to play a budget deck, so we're not playing any expensive dual lands. So Soulscar Mage is still that, but it is a very, very viable and useful card in the deck. Haptra isn't one of the more important. Well, out of these 4 creatures I'm showing you, it's the least important. Yeah, it gets us 1/1 Death Touch Snakes, which can be nice. And if they don't put anything out early, it can put, counters on creatures if you want it to. So outside of the Death Touch Snake token creation that this has, it doesn't serve too much of a purpose for us. Archfiend Ifnir is an all-star in this deck. If you have this plus a nest of scarabs or a haptra or a Scorpion God out, this thing is just great. We're playing a whole bunch of cards that cycle, mostly in our non-creature spells. You can cycle out Archfiends. We have a whole bunch of stuff in the sideboard that can cycle out. Our sideboard's pretty interesting. We'll get there when we get there, though. So Archfiend had to play. If your opponent's not playing any creatures, this is just a 5-mana 5/4 that can cycle out, which is kind of decent in itself. And then, of course, 3 copies of Scorpion God. By far the most expensive, cards in the deck. But it's the reason I made this deck. It reads, whenever a creature dies with a -1/-1 counter on it, draw a card. That means your own, too. Just keep that in mind. Maybe you put a -1 counter on one of your Archfiends or a haptra. Then they try to kill it, or they do kill it. You still get to draw a card off of it, at least. His activated ability is decent. It makes sure that they can't just put out chumps. For 3 mana, you can basically, bring something down that's super powerful or kill like a 1 toughness creature or something like that. And then it's got the God Cycle ability where when it dies, you return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So outside of mostly using this card for the draw ability that it has on it, when you have like a Soulscar Mage or an Archfiend Ifnir out, this card is legendary. Sometimes you just kill this. You kill your Scorpion God. You draw a card. I mean, you put, obviously, -1 counters on it. Then you draw a card, and it comes back to your hand at the beginning of the next end step, which isn't too awful. I've done that just a few times, when you're playing like a mill or control deck and they're not playing with too many creatures. Sometimes just to draw a card, you kill your own guys off. So those are our main kind of big pieces in the deck. Let's get to the other creatures. Alright, so we're only playing 2 different other creatures, and it's going to be 4 copies of Obelisk Spider and 3 copies of Baleful Ammit. I know what you guys are saying. Where's Channeler Initiate? Well, it's a pretty expensive card. I try to keep this as budget as I can. Scorpion God and Soulscar Mage really push the limit. Hapatra is kind of getting up there. She's about $1 a piece. Archfiend's almost $1 a piece. So I try to keep this as much of a budget deck as I could. And so we have a different substitute for Channeler Initiate. But anyway, Obelisk Spider is a 3-mana 1/4 reach. It says whenever Obelisk Spider deals combat damage to a creature, put a -1/-1 counter on that creature. Whenever you put 1 or more -1 counters on a creature, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. I'm going to just So you've seen the Baleful Amulet. Let's go over this quickly. A 3-mana 4/3 lifelink. When this enters the battlefield, put a -1 counter on target creature you control. Okay, so most of the times you put it on itself, or you put it on like a useless snake token, or an insect token or something like that. But it kind of goes with the theme, kind of fills out the curve, gains us some life. I would probably put Channeler Initiate in here instead of this, but anyway. What's great about Obelisk Spider, why I'm playing a full playset of this card? A, it's cheap. It's a very cheap card, about a quarter per card for this thing, at $1 for the playset. But if you're playing like against a blue-white Monument deck, and their board just got huge, you play an Archfiend, you cycle a card, you just drain them for 6, 7, 8, just for cycling a single card. It's absolutely insane. And let's say you're playing against this blue-white Monument deck. You have a Scorpion Guard, Archfiend, Ifnir out, and an Obelisk Spider. Those are your 3 creatures. You cycle out one of our things. Maybe you cycle out an Archfiend or one of the spells, non-creature spells we're playing, and you basically kill their entire board. Not only do you draw 3 or 4 cards from killing all their 1/1s with the Scorpion God, but you drain them for a whole bunch with Obelisk Spider. Like, it's just an insane combo. And I know itself, a 3-mana 1/4 can't... I mean, I guess you can make... Heart of Kieran smaller, but it's not a very good thing. Really only in here for that drain ability. Gains us life, and it's really whenever you put a -1 counter on a creature, even your own. So you have a Baleful Amulet, or you're using Haptra, you hit for combat damage, you pop one of her counters on your own creatures, this still goes off. Also, you could start putting -1 counters on Obelisk Spider. I know it becomes in range of things like Magma Spray and Incendiary Flow and stuff like that, but you can start putting -1 counters on this, and you'll be completely fine. Another thing I want to point out is why we're not playing Emit Eternal. And the only reason is it's kind of an expensive card, about $2 per card, $8 for the playset. I would definitely play that over Baleful Amulet, probably even over Channeler Initiate, maybe. We actually have one of our non-creature spells as a replacement for our Channeler Initiate, but replace like a 3 Baleful Amulet for that Emit Eternal, and then replace the 3 non-creature spells we're playing with the Channeler Initiate, and we should be good. So I just want to explain, it's an expensive card as of right now. I think its price will go down a little bit when, hopefully it doesn't see any play in a Pro Tour or anything like that. So, yeah, let's get to the non-creature spells. What's this dreaded card I've been saying is replacing Channeler Initiate? Well, we'll get there, and it cycles out and kind of does the same thing for Channeler Initiate. I'm going to be playing 3 copies of Beneath the Sands, 3 copies of Abrade, and 2 copies of Dissenter's Deliverance. Okay, Abrade is burn, removal, helps with Soul Scar Mage, takes out artifacts. Very, very strong card. Wanted to play the 3 of in a deck. I know it's about $1 a card, but trust me, you want this. I know we're playing Dissenter's Deliverance, but that's in there mostly because of cycling. Beneath the Sands is the card I use to replace Channeler Initiate. It costs 1 more, it's sorcery speed. Yeah, I know, but you basically go search your library for a basic land, which is pretty important in this deck because we're a 3-color budget deck. So, but it also cycles out, which is good for Archfiend and Ifnir. You play turn 5 Archfiend and Ifnir, you draw into this, it's a dead draw. Not really, because you cycle it out, you give all their guys counters, and you do crazy things with some of our -1 counter synergies. So, Beneath the Sands is in there for that reason. And then the 2 Dissenter's Deliverance, more artifact hate. A lot of good artifacts going around. Unfortunately, can't take out Fraying Sanity or any of those good enchantments, but cycles out for 1, which kind of thins out our deck. Let's get into the last 2 non-creature spells. Our last 2 non-creature spells are going to be 4 copies of Nest of Scarabs and 3 copies of Deem Worthy. Nest of Scarabs is a no-brainer. The only thing I need to point out with this is it's not like Haptra, where if you put 3 -1 counters on a guy all at the same time, you only get 1 snake. This is the better version, where if you put 3 -1 counters on a guy, you get 3 1/1 insect tokens. And this card gets ridiculous once you have multiple out. So that is super, super strong. And then for Deem Worthy is the only red burn spell in Standard right now that can cycle out. So it deals 7 damage at instant speed. And this card is actually a lot better than it looks. Because at 5 mana at instant speed, you can deal 7 damage to a creature. 7 damage. You know, they have a Crested Sunmare out. They think they're okay from your burn spells. They're not. You think they can play a World Breaker. They think they can play their own archfiend, ifnir, anything where they're like, it's out of Grasp of Darkness range, it's out of Abrade range, it's out of Magma Spray range. We are free to go. Nope. D-worthy. Not many people play it. It's pretty good. And also for 4 mana, it can just be deal 2 damage to a target creature and draw a card. And the reason I am playing 3 of this is, A, it takes out bigger creatures, which is what we kind of need. You know, if we don't have a Soul Scar mage and can't put -1 counters on like their creatures, Deem-worthy can be that big removal spell for us. So the card is actually a lot better than it looks. And it's a budget deck. Kind of seems janky, but it works. It definitely works. All right, let's get to the lands. We're playing 24 lands. We're going to be playing 4 Cinder Baron, 4 Foul Orchard, and 4 Timber Gorge, along with an Evolving Wilds, 4 Forest, 3 Mountain, and 4 Swamp. I know that is a lot of tap lands. There's more tap lands than untapped lands, but it's a budget deck. You do need the 3 sources, you know. We have the Scorpion God, which is a black and a red. We have Obelisk Spider, which is black and green. Haptra, black and green. Archfiend, double black. We have things in the sideboard that are double green, green, red, and that's it. Most of our stuff in the sideboard's just removal. So, trust me, it's really, really worth it. Especially, I know we're playing Beneath the Sands, but we can't just rely on that to fix our mana. We don't have like anything like a Tune with Ether or a Traverse the Ovenwald. So we do want the mana fixing as much as we can get. And Beneath the Sands can really help with our ramp and getting lands out of our deck, getting a whole bunch of lands out and doing stuff like that. So this, if you know, obviously if you have like the Foreboding Ruins, the Cinder Glades, the what's the black-green dual land? I can't remember. I can't think of it right now. But if you have those expensive dual lands, go ahead and throw them in here. Let's get to the sideboard. All right, the sideboard is somewhat predictable, but there is a few cards in here that are noteworthy. We're playing 3 Hippolytus Mark for giving our guys hexproof. You're playing like a blue-red control deck. It's good against this. 3 Magma Spray. It's more burn. You could take out maybe Deem-worthies instead of it. If you're playing like against zombies or aggro or something like that, Mega Spray is good for that. 2 Prowling Serpapard against counter spells. We don't want our Archfiends getting countered. We don't want our Scorpion Gods getting countered. So Prowling Serpapard can help with that. 3 Struggle to Survive. These last 3 cards in the sideboard are what I need to explain. 3 Struggle to Survive. Bear with me here. For 3 mana, at instant speed, Struggle deals damage to target creature equal to the number of lands you control. This is good because, at first, for 3 mana, on turn 3, it only deals 3 damage. Sorry. But later in the game, for 3 mana, it can deal 5, 6, 7 damage. But the Aftermath card is why I am kind of playing this. It says, each player shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library. A mill player's worst nightmare. Commit to Memory does this, but Struggle to Survive does it for 2 mana. I mean, we don't get to draw the 7 cards that Memory does, but Survive just resets. You know, because Mill is looking to deal 60 damage to you or do your library. If you can reset your life total back up to 60 or 50, you know, because you've drawn some cards, this will devastate them, right? They see this get put into a graveyard, they're like, oh boy, I gotta redo all this stuff. So Struggle to Survive can be more removal, and it can be a good backup against Mill. Trust me, I only threw this in my sideboard because I play against a lot of Mill. My friends love Mill, I love Mill. So I threw it in here just because in my local meta, Mill is a thing. You could change this out for anything, but Struggle to Survive is what I have. And then 2 Wanderer into Death to finish out the sideboard here. It can cycle out for 2, but it can, for 3 mana, at sorcery speed, unfortunately, return up to 2 creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Now, this is good if you're playing against a deck that doesn't play a lot of creatures, because you could put the -1 counters on your own guys, and then kill them off, and then get them back from the grave and replay them, and just get tons of value, just tons of value. So, 2 Wanderer in Death, if you're playing against like Control, especially Control, because they'll kill your guys and get them back with this, or you kill your own guys when they go encounters, draw some cards from Scorpion God, get some snakes with Haptra, get some insects with Scarabs, and then get them back with Wanderer in Death. I lied when I said that was the last card in the sideboard. We're actually playing 2 copies of Samut, Voice of Dissent. What? Yeah, we're playing this in the sideboard. And it's for one reason, and one reason only. Or, there's multiple reasons. I don't know why I just said that. But, A, it's very good against control. Flash cards are very good against control. You do it on your end step. You make them burn a counter spell or removal spell out of their hand, have a whole bunch of lands tapped after that, and then you untap and draw. So it can bait out counter spells, can bait out kill spells. But also, outside of that, not only is it a great body to have, you don't want to be putting -1 counters on this guy, but he says, other creatures you control have haste. This could be very good. You have to have explosive turns against control. You really do. And so if you have a Samut, you play it on their end step, you untap, maybe you have a nest of scarabs and a haptra out. You start putting -1 counters maybe on your haptra or something like that, or you play a Baleful Ammit, or you start doing some stuff. You start putting -1 counters on things. You create a whole bunch of 1/1 green snake tokens that have death touch and haste, and same with the insects, they have haste. So that is why. I know you can't use the white ability on him, or her, excuse me, but definitely good against control. Not many people play this card, and they're not expecting a 5-mana flash guy to come out, or at least at my local area. So I found this card also very strong against control and actually mid-range matchups. All right, I went over this briefly, but I'm trying to add a upgrade kind of section to my videos now. What upgrades should you make to this deck? Definitely a full playset of Channeler Initiate. If you can get that, kick out Beneath the Sands. Channeler Initiate, A, can tap for all types of mana. B, it enters with 3 -1 counters, which is good with the Haptra. It's good with Nest of Scarabs. You have a Scorpion God out. It automatically comes out with counters. And it's just super, super nice. Also, the Emit Eternal, take it out for a Baleful Ammit, or take out the Baleful Ammit, replace it with Emit Eternal, because that will give you tons of -1 counters as well. So those are the 2 huge upgrades, other than the lands, I would recommend making in this deck. Outside of that, the deck actually does pretty well. I found out that it does really well against token strategies, as Archfiend of Ifnir has always done, and it does really bad against non-creature token or non-creature strategies like mill and control. We have Prowling Serpapard, Hapadra's Mark, Wander and Death, and Struggle to Survive to help against control and mill matchups. But outside of that, we don't do very well in game 1 against control or mill, so I definitely had a sideboard against our weaker matchups. That is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I know this is a long video, but I had to explain a lot of my reasonings and thinking about this deck. I've probably made and changed and deleted and remade this deck probably 10 times. It's like, first it was super janky, and now it seems okay. The problem is, since we're trying to be budget, if you have the money, go ahead and get the upgrades, because the upgrades really, really help. If you're playing against a deck that doesn't play a lot of creatures, this deck struggles so badly. You're just putting out kind of weakish creatures that don't really help. But against like aggro decks and like mid-range decks, this deck does pretty well. I'm not going to lie. Solemnity, the enchantment, really hurts this deck. It does, and we don't have a plan for it. I guess if you wanted to, you could play Appetite for the Unnatural in the sideboard instead of maybe Salmon or something like that. Just destroying an art or an enchantment could be huge for us, especially if like a Cast Out or a Stasis Snare really hurt our Scorpion God. So maybe you want to throw Appetite in for the sideboard. See, I'm still trying to work on this deck. Been working on it for weeks. I've been changing and updating it. The sideboard is built against what it's weak against, but it could have still a little bit more work. So make sure you change the sideboard a little bit to how your local meta works. And yeah, and if you can get the upgrades, or you already have the upgrades, throw them in, because those are super, super sweet. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one.